Thank you. I see some of you have not been recovered from the break, so hopefully everybody will join by the time I finish. Yeah, it's interesting to be in the afternoon sessions, especially in these events where you present lots of interesting stuff. I was talking to my colleagues before. They kind of stole most of my presentation, so hopefully you're not going to be bored. Basically, I've been doing this for about 15 years now, working with data-driven applications and with data. I've joined UiPath only 6 months ago, but it's been quite a ride, and I'm going to talk to you about our products and our partnerships in the AI space. Robots are learning new skills. This is not something new. Of course, we cannot move forward in automation with what we have today, because the automation has basic capabilities. We need to improve that, and for that reason, we need to add more skills. Take this message into consideration because I'm part of the product team. So we are working on stuff. Some of the things can be shared, some of the things cannot be shared. Also, some of the things might change because of market trends, because of partnership, because of negotiations, because of other strategic stuff. We need to take everything into consideration when we put this out onto the market. Just to give you an idea, my colleagues mentioned before the analytics component. The analytics component have been under development for more than 6 months. We've showed it to a few customers. We got the feedback. It was not satisfactory, so we kind of pivoted. So now it's kind of under redevelopment phase, where we try to integrate the analytics into the orchestrator, because that was one of the main feedbacks that we got. So we are aiming for release in the autumn, the October timeframe for the analytics platform that you saw before and the colleagues mentioned, just to give you a heads up. Now, moving basically to AI, we try to improve the skills that the robot have, because it's not enough just to copy-paste things from one place to another. It's not actually enough. So, one of my key responsibilities is talking to customers. I've talked today with a few customers. I travel quite a lot in order to get feedback and take that feedback and put it into the product itself. It's basically very relevant for us what you give us in terms of what you need, so that we put that into the product and it's actually used. Either we make something which is usable, or we do a product which looks very nice but nobody will use it. I've seen some of those in my life, especially when working with multinational companies, because it's very tough to make a product usable. Now, moving on to AI and what we actually want to do, like I mentioned, the current RPA is just emulating what the human does. And when we say human, it's like your average human, just copying stuff from one place to another, doing a bit of logic and just doing their daily activities, but adding smart stuff, like having a segmentation campaign, for example, for your customers, and taking a decision based on the output of that campaign is quite painful. You have to take a few considerations into your decision, so that's not very straightforward. So you need to have more complex decision algorithms in order to have smart processing tools and capabilities. So that's why we try to enhance, on one hand, the robots with their capabilities, but also we want to enhance our platform or ecosystem. So for that reason, we are actually working on a few components. This actually shows what you've seen in the previous session in a nicer way. We have 4 key pillars. Yeah, it's the thunder which was stolen, basically. We have 4 key pillars in our product development team, which focuses on AI. And I'm going to cover them based on priority, actually on the evolution and the maturity level. The first one is the visual understanding, and thankfully I've included a video after this so that you don't get all bored. Visual understanding is one of the key differentiators on the market out there, and we've managed to embed that into our platform. It's out in the release 19.2. It can be tested as an activities pack. Basically, you can scrape the screen and have your components being brought into the automation process by using computer vision. And that's quite painful, especially in virtual environments. So if you have a Citrix environment and that changes resolution for each execution, or maybe you have it more on the left-hand side or on the right-hand side, then your kind of anchor that you would have in your normal RPA automation would get screwed up. So because of that, by using computer vision, you persist the accuracy of your assessment of the screen whenever you execute that process. And that's very, very important, especially when working with these virtual environments, VDIs as we call them. The second pillar is the document understanding. I've talked to quite a few customers for this year. Every single customer has documents that they want to process. Whenever we talk about invoices, contracts, receipts, any kind of documents. So that's very useful to have in hand. And of course, OCR does a okay job or good enough job, especially if you have a template. If you have a templated document and every time you kind of extract the same information from there, it will work, it's not a problem. If you have something which changes, and receipts is a very good example, on the one hand side, you have receipts which are different in terms of length, in terms of layout, in terms of language, and some of them are really in a bad shape because you keep them in your back pocket the whole trip. Once you get back, you do your expenses. So lots of use cases in this document understanding, and we are working on a classification algorithm that is going to go on top of the machine on the OCR part in order to have better accuracy in your overall process end to end. Third would be the process understanding. Some of the customers have already tested this. We have running pilots with some of our customers. Basically, it's a recorder that records what the user does. And the main difference in this concept, it's not really process mining. If you have seen process mining before, process mining actually leverages the logs of a particular application. So you take the logs from SAP, you put them into the process mining tool, and you get a nice tree graph to have a look at and copy that in your automation process, for example. If you want to do process understanding, it's a bit more complex because processes do not do only one application. Processes use 90% of the times Excel, I would say, and maybe Outlook. So it's very important that the tool that you use to record the overall process looks across applications. So the process recorder actually looks across the application of a user, what he opens on the screen, which fields he interacts with, and that gets translated into a smart log that gets processed, and then you can actually apply a bit of process mining at the end to actually display the overall process. The fourth one, and the new kid on the block, basically is the conversational understanding. We've started working on this in the background basically for the past couple of months, but only I think 2 or 3 weeks ago it was officially announced that we are actually working on something internal. These are all internal components that we are working on, by the way, by our development team. We are going to also go into conversational understanding, which can go from chatbots, analyzing any kind of free text, sentiment analysis on that text, and certain variations that are in this space. And one of the main use cases that you can think of is for the attended robot that can assist any kind of, let's say, customer service operator that can get suggestions while he's talking to the customers without having to do anything by the attended robot. Now, let's look at a short video of what computer vision does and what's happening behind the scenes.
Our robots look at their environment just like humans look at the world. By identifying all the elements on the screen, they create a full picture and a relationship map, this being the future base of our computer vision system. You can see how the robot identifies each individual element in a static or dynamic content in real time and displays it in this visualization screen.
So, not spending too much time on this, but what you saw basically on the left-hand side was the actual application in the virtual environment. On the right-hand side was the actual algorithm behind it. It's not only machine learning, it's actually a bit more. It's actually artificial intelligence. One of the key concepts in artificial intelligence is neural networks. For this particular process and recognition on the screen, we actually use a convolutional neural network, which recognizes all the controls on the screen based on the training examples, and then recognizes whatever you feed into the network afterwards. So it's actually artificial intelligence. We don't only talk about it, we actually use it. If what we are working on is not enough and you have more specific use cases which are specific to a particular industry or a solution, we are also partnering with quite a few technical partners. We have over 60 additional partners in terms of AI that we work with. Abby, just to give you an example, they are out there. Data Robot, another example. There's one guy from Data Robot which I just spoke with before lunch. They are also doing interesting stuff. So they help us and the customers to move forward a bit faster. So you have a specific need. If we cannot do that, or if we cannot deliver that fast enough, we have also the partners which can help us in that initiative. Of course, there's always someone which is smarter, more advanced, and this is this case. So you're not only working with us, you might work on your own. We have companies which are a bit more advanced. I think I spoke with one of the companies in that scenario or setup last night. Actually, they have already the models developed. And especially if you're working in a marketing campaign or marketing department, there's always customer segmentation, churn models, they're already there. So in that use case, you just need to automate or to integrate the model in your end-to-end process or workflow. So for that reason, custom-built models can be also integrated in the RPA platform and overall automation process, and that's a very good skill to have in the company, and as a tool or platform, it's again very, very useful. I'm going to do the link with one of the products that we are working on. It's actually very interesting to see how customers are working with this machine learning or AI, and some of them have hit kind of a wall, and I'm going to come back to that in a few slides, because it's very difficult to take your model from like a lab and kind of a university setup or things which are not connected to the real world, to make it work for thousands of users, to have security, authentication, authorization, and everything connected, and be an enterprise-grade application. So many companies which have developed models are hitting this, let's say, wall when going to production. So just to close off this area of the presentation, basically we have a robust environment, whether we are talking about our own capabilities and focuses, like the 4 key pillars that I mentioned, whether we're talking about partners or models which have been already published on the Go marketplace. But also we enable the customers to develop their custom models and bring them onto the ecosystem, because we are an open platform. Of course, we have the drag and drop AI. This has been mentioned already. And computer vision is one of those initial steps. It's basically having functionalities in the studio that can allow people who want to automate something to just drag that particular functionality and then they can leverage it without having to understand what's behind the scenes, right? Nobody wants to know how to train a convolutional neural network. You'd have to spend quite a few years understanding that, so it's not a straightforward concept. But of course, some people have done this already, and we try to embed these basic components that we see that work in our lab, embed those into the final product. And the computer vision is just one of those examples. Now, this is probably one of the most interesting things that we've announced or talked about. It's the AI fabric. This is actually the next evolution in terms of orchestrator. The next slide is actually going to show you a mock-up of what it's going to look like. As I mentioned, the main challenge when implementing a machine learning or AI model, when you take it into production, is managing that overall end-to-end process, like taking the data, visualize it, build the ingestion pipeline of your data, then giving the output to whatever consumer you have, whether it's a dashboard or it's another application. If you want to do this end-to-end with some security on top, with control, with scalability, it's very, very difficult. And for that reason, we are working on a platform which is called the AI Fabric. The larger announcement is going to be made next week in San Francisco at a Google event. This is basically the next evolution in terms of the orchestrator. This is a mock-up on how it's going to look like. Of course, I think the analytics is not there because it was only introduced in beta a few weeks back, so we are testing it internally at the moment. There's also the monitoring, which is going to be released in 19.4, which is supposed to be there. But think of this, having a platform where you can bring models from either Go, which someone else has published, bring your own models written in Python and upload them in here and consume them. Somebody can actually just call the models like they would call any other component that is available in the studio and interact with that quite easily. So it brings a bit of flexibility and scalability for people who have models, especially working models. They work in the lab, but then they want to take them onto the next level. And that next level is actually putting it into production. And that is quite painful, I can tell you from experience. You have to go through all sorts of checks, QA, security checks, compliance in terms of how you store your data. So it's very, very painful. And a platform like this would solve many of those problems for you. So I think it's going to bring a lot of value to the customers, and the feedback that we got when we showed the initial mock-ups of this and the idea was very well received on the market. Early access program is mentioned right there on the bottom right. The early access program is something very, very unique, I would say. We are actually partnering with our customers in developing new features and new components. I'm actually managing the early access program for the whole EMEA region, and that's why I actually meet with customers. On one hand, we give customers early access to some of our tools, but we also give customers access to our capabilities. So customers which have already done the automation journey, they are a bit mature on that. They want to take it to the next level. Maybe they have 1-2 data scientists, but they don't know how to pick their use cases. We help them with that. We do the scoping along with them. And then we actually try to deliver the use cases together. And that's a very, I would say, unique added value, because you get a lot back. Basically, you get access to our development teams, whether we are talking about product or engineering. We are going to work together with you in order to deliver that use case. Most probably, if that use case is something that we've seen before and it's requested by some of our other customers, it's going to be even more appealing to us. So in order to get something delivered faster, we go to the customer, we work with them, and because we are in Europe, of course, I have the pleasure to actually travel there because data does not move around from country to country, especially some countries are like a bit paranoid about moving data outside of that country, and there are no data centers which can help us with that. So working with customers brings a lot of benefits on both sides. So you get something developed together, your direct contributor to the product or the use case, you get to use that at a preferential price or sometimes even free of charge at the beginning, and then you can see your work also in other customers, right? So you've contributed to a particular use case, that machine learning model got developed and validated, it's included in the product, so now basically also your contribution is going to be available on the platform for some other people to use it. Of course, we will need your data and your resources in terms of actually contributing to the use case, because one of the key concepts of working together is having a joint force to deliver those. If you have the RPA, we come with the machine learning or data scientists. If you don't have the RPA, but you have some processes automated, of course, we can work together in extending those capabilities together. And again, I would like to encourage you to reach out to us or directly to me if you want to get enrolled into the program and see what we are actually working on. Demos and hands-on stuff that none of the other people have, because I'm part of the product team and we have things which are not public yet. So people who have enrolled under the program can see very early stages of some of the products. We are very committed, so most of our investments have been focused into AI and R&D after the last few rounds of investment. We scaled quite a lot. Actually, I joined the Bucharest team only 6 months ago, but the team in Seattle, because these are our two main areas for now, the Bucharest office and the Seattle office have grown like 10 times than the initial team that was there almost 1 year ago, not even 1 year, like 9 months ago. So we are investing heavily in these AI components that I mentioned earlier in terms of developing them and delivering them to our customers through either the early access program or through the standard channels. So to close it up, basically our AI strategy has these three main approaches. The AI skills, whether we are talking about the document understanding, process understanding, computer vision part, the screen understanding basically component, or whether we talk about the Go components or things that we deliver along with our partners. These are very useful components to have in all companies that I've talked to until now. If you have other opinions as well or other inputs, I'm here to talk about it. It's quite helpful to get your feedback actually on this. The second would be the drag and drop AI, and the computer vision falls under this, but don't think of it just as that. Basically, computer vision is just one step. It's allowing people to leverage complicated stuff behind the hood, but in a very easy and straightforward way by dragging and dropping certain functionalities. Of course, you might have to fill in 1, 2, 3 or something very basic there, but it's not something very complex. But it allows people to leverage these new technologies in a very easy way. And third is the AI Fabric. As I told you, it's one of our key components and focuses for the upcoming months. We are going to have a working demo later in the year. Initially, it's going to be a cloud-based version, but we are also working on the on-prem version, especially for Europe, on the feedback collected. Basically, it's a very important thing to have on-prem. So we are going to deliver that as well on-prem, not just on cloud. With that, I want to thank you. And if you have any other questions or you want to discuss a specific use case, I'm here till the end of the day, or you can get in touch with me through some of my colleagues, which have a direct phone line to me, actually. Everybody calls nowadays. So yeah, basically, thank you.